Kraft Cheese raised $300 million this year. Hey, the Dove Unilever campaign had $20 million of profit. But I'm like, how much of that am I seeing?
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of, what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, for another fun episode, I'm bringing you Bobby Umar and letting him tell you his story about how he left corporate America, found a speaking career, and launched to be able to speak in front of audiences as large as 2,000 people. It's a really fun episode, guys. Hope you enjoy this. All right, guys, going to be another fun day. I'm bringing you Bobby Umar. This dude's got a cool story. We got some of the same vibes, some of the same familiarities to go through, so I'm really looking forward to it. So, Bobby, welcome to the show, my friend. Please share your journey with us.
Thank you, Donnie. I'm excited to be here. You want me to tell the whole shebang story?
So let's go all the way back to you were born when. No, I'm kidding. Let's go from I know you did your stint in corporate America and how that leap took you into what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think the way that best describes it is I was a loss leader. And so I started out as I went into engineering because I was good at math and physics, and my dad said, be a doctoral engineer. And then I did that in school, and then I started working as an engineer. And while I was there, I was bored. And I was just really bored sitting in front of a computer. And so on the side, I decided to start a musical theater company. Started producing and directing musicals, which is kind of funny. It was so different, right? And,
yeah. I mean, how do you go from an engineer to directing musicals? That's almost like an oxymoron.
Well, it's funny because even during university and college, I had the same thing. I was studying engineering, but I was completely involved in the musical theater community. And so I started that company, and I grew from 2 people to 150 people in about 4 years. And I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should do something else. And then after I left engineering, I was like, oh, maybe I should get into film and television, which is something I always wanted to do. Couldn't get a job for the life of me. Then I was like, okay, what about engineering? And they were all like beginner roles. I was like, I just spent 4 years. Like, I don't want to do this. And so then I did my MBA, and I decided to go do a marketing MBA. And after that, then I went into brand marketing. Did brand marketing for about 4 years. And again, same thing. I was feeling kind of stuck and unfulfilled what I was doing. Working 80 hours a week, working for the man and building someone else's dreams. And, there's like, hey, Kraft Cheese raised $300 million this year. Hey, the Dove Unilever campaign, had, $20 million of profit. But I'm like, how much of that am I seeing? Like, I'm spending 80 hours a week. I have a small salary, and my life was not balanced. Well, my wife's like, where are you? Like, you're never home.
I'm wondering if at some point you did the stupid thing that I did, because one of the things that helped me realize that I need to go out on my own is I've been a sales guy my entire career. So I sat down and actually added up how much I'd sold over the years, of a 20-year career,
sure,
and then figured up how much the company's made versus what I made.
Yeah.
That was one of the stupidest things I ever did.
Yeah, and I can tell you that it was a big struggle, and then, and also then the other thing happened was that my health was kind of failing. And so I found out that I was diabetic, and then I went to my company and said, look, the normal blood sugar is 6.2 or lower. That's the Canadian version. And my blood sugar in 4 months ago was 12, and my blood sugar now is 16. And I propose that I take 2 weeks off to get my health back in order. And I want to take my crazy hours of 80 hours a week and take it down to something reasonable. I said 50. Which is still in some ways unreasonable, but that's the mindset, right? And then I mentioned that, and I said, and then 3 weeks later, I got a package. See you later, and that was really jarring. Like, okay, I guess they don't want me to be a problem. So,
yeah, you're not allowed to be sick in corporate America. I mean,
yeah, I was like, wow, okay. But the good news was the package was quite extensive for someone who already been at this company for 8 months, and I was like, yeah, man, let's do this.
Here's my launch pad, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that and then when I left, what I can tell you is that all the alarm bells hit me because over the years people had said. So when I used to teach this youth program, and I would talk about communication and engineering, things like that. And what was amazing was people would say, Bobby, you're such a good speaker to the kids. You ever thought about doing that for a living? And I was like. And I met this motivational speaker, and he's like, Bobby, you're really going to connect with the audience. I'm like, no, I'm busy building up my brand and trying to make it in the corporate world. And then when I was in corporate world, we would have these offsites, team building offsites, and I would volunteer to run team building events that I've been doing for 10, 15 years. They said, Bobby, you're really good at, running the events and making the key takeaways and relating it back to business, and you ever thought about doing that for on your own? I'm like, no, you know what? I'm trying to get to the director level. Again, I'm trying to move up. I'm trying to impress my VPs, my directors, right? Finally, when I left that last corporate job, I talked to my 4 best friends. I called them the Council of Umar, and I said, look, guys, I don't think I want to go back to doing the same thing. And then they said, Bobby, you ever thought about, being a speaker? And I was like, you know what? Yeah. I've definitely been told this several times, and so I definitely got the sign that you don't need to do something else. And so I dove in my personal brand, started figuring out what's the best thing, and I found different elements that aligned with who I was and what I would be good at, and got feedback from a lot of people, and then professional speaker became the way to go.
No, that's so cool. So there's a lot of people that kind of take somewhat of a similar journey. Is they either get burned out in corporate America, they get inspired by somebody else on stage doing their thing. They're like, I can do that. Or somebody tells them, hey, you should be a speaker. You can go. So I'm pretty sure that, the first time you put your website up, you put your business cards out, the whole world showed up and said, oh, my God, where have you been all my life?
No. No, the journey is long. The journey is hard. The biggest struggles you have is getting the word out. Although I think I did a pretty good job in the beginning. So I've always been a good connector. So even before the times of LinkedIn, I had been collecting people's emails. And so when I launched my business, I had 3,000 emails in an Excel sheet. So I sent that to everybody. And then of those 3,000, I picked the 500 people who I thought would be good for sending my brochure to. So I sent a brochure to 500 people. And so the first couple of years, I started getting referrals and people, thanking me. So I was doing that quite well. And I also leveraged social media to post it. So that was good. I think that.
Now, at that time, were you doing more coaching and workshops, or were you just doing speaking to companies?
No, in the beginning, it was just speaking. So my whole thing was, I'm going to be a speaker. And it's still the number one thing I do. The coaching workshops came later because later people say, Bob, you need a book. Bob, you need an online program. Bob, you need to do a workshop. So, in the beginning, it was just, I just do keynotes, right, or hosting or things like that.
And was that mainly like associations, or was that like private company events?
There's three types. So either you go to a conference, right? So a conference for entrepreneurs, a conference for marketing, a conference for business and tech, whatever. The second one would be a company. So you go to a company and you deliver training on networking or deliver training on personal branding. And the third would be universities and colleges. I still like that age group because they're so idealistic and they're so enthusiastic versus, CEOs who are a little bit more stern and not willing to listen. So I definitely enjoy that group more. And so those are three different areas in which I would go. And so in the beginning, it was just doing the whole speaking thing.
And what were you speaking on out the gate? Is this still the same thing you speak on, or has that evolved?
No. And that's funny because my first mentor said, Bobby, come up with 3 speaker topics. So I came up with 3 topics. And the first speech I ever gave was in February 2007. I remember this. And it was one of my 3 topics called the 3 Ps of leadership. So, and they were people, proactiveness, and passion. And what's funny is I gave that talk twice. The other 2 talks I never gave because as I started evolving my business, people gave me feedback and I started changing what I was talking about. And right away, it seemed to me the one thing that was clear was that I need to leverage the fact that I'm a networking expert. People want to know about networking, and I was good at it. And so, because I told a story about the 3,000, that's actually a networking tactic that most people haven't done. So, wow, right. You collected 3,000 emails and addresses over 10 years? I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, wow. Yeah,
well, because most people go to a networking event and they collect all the cards and then they get set on the corner of their desk, right? Or put in a box. I mean, I know like my first sales job I left, I had done so much networking. I had business card boxes, the box you get when you order business cards.
Right.
I had like 3 or 4 of those like stacked up on my desk full of other people's business cards that I never did anything with.
Yeah, in fact, I had done both. I had actually I had actually collected names, emails, and addresses and inputted them in an Excel sheet. But then I also used an app I found, a technology tool called Card Munch that I had about 800 cards and it scanned them all so fast. It was amazing. And input them in an Excel sheet. Brilliant. And so I had that stuff. So that was ahead of my time. So networking became a big thing that I started talking about. And then in 2008, I spoke at a conference and I mentioned personal branding as why it's important for networking. And people loved that. And it totally took off. And that became my second big topic. So, yes, the topics have evolved over the years, as has, as in my business plan, as is my why statement. They've all kind of evolved. And the other thing I just want to add was to the beginning, too, that I think the other biggest struggle was pricing. Like, you just don't know how to price yourself. They ask you, and I go, I don't know. What's your budget? Like, so it's a very hard thing to know your value.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that get into the speaker game, a lot of the hurdles they find is, 1 is how the hell do I find a speaking engagement?
Right.
2, when they ask me what my budget is, what do I tell them? Right. 3, what am I supposed to do after I'm on stage? Do I give them handouts? What's my takeaways? Do I need, all that? How did you figure all that out? I mean, was it trial and error? Was it you got punched in the face by life a couple times and go, okay, I've got to change this methodology? What was it?
I'm a learn by doing kind of guy, so I definitely, and I'm also learn by conversations. So a lot of people learn by books. I'm not a learn by books guy. I learned by doing, but I also learned by conversation. So I had a mentor, I had a couple of advisors, and because of my network, I was able to talk to people and have a great conversation about what to do. So it was actually pretty easy within a year or two to figure out how to get out there and reach people and figure that stuff out. But other aspects, particularly the social media aspect, as well as, in terms of pricing, those are things that took a lot longer to learn. And again, you talk to various people, and every time I meet people, they'll give you conflicting advice. And that's the biggest challenge too. I mean, even parenting, I get, people giving me conflicting parenting advice, conflicting medical advice, conflicting business advice. Some people say, no, you need to triple your prices. And other people say, no, you need to have a balance. And other people, they say different things. And so ultimately a lot of you have to learn on your own. But part of it comes from, the big thing is to be confident. You need to be confident in exactly what you're doing. Here's my price. Here's what I do. Here's how it's going to benefit you. And if you're confident with that, then the price you set and the target you set and the talks you're doing, they will happen.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting. And you say confidence, but I'll also add to that patience, because a lot of these people, like when I jumped out of my own, I had my local network, similar to you. I was huge in the networking game, knew a ton of people. So it was one of those things. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start my own business and the world's just going to show up and say hello, the ignorance of my own mind. But I think a lot of people do that is they're good at one skill. They're good at one talent, and they think the world's going to show up for them. So the confidence, put yourself out there, and then the patience to know that this isn't an overnight game. How many years did it take you in the speaking circuit before you started to feel like you were breaking through?
I would say quite a while, but to be fair, I've seen people who break it and make it within 6 months, and I've personally helped people do it with my work, with my coaching in 3 months. But at the time, I started my business in 2007, and then the recession hit, and then in 2008, my first son was born, and so I decided to be a stay-at-home dad. And so,
so you're going to blame your slow rise on your son? No.
But the truth is, I worked 20 hours a week, right? And I had a teaching gig that I kind of relied on, a part-time teaching gig. And so when my son and daughter were born within 2 years, I didn't do very much. But that said, when my speaking career I think really took off was probably, I'd say about a year after 2011. So 2011 was when I did my first of my 5 TEDx talks. And that was the day I launched my social media strategy. So I launched a newsletter, my Facebook page, a Twitter strategy. And then within about 6 months, I had about 5,000 Twitter followers. And someone said, hey, we love what you talk about, this leadership stuff. And can you come and do a talk on passion engagement for volunteers? I'm like, sure, I can. And I was like, wow, I got a gig off Twitter? That's amazing. I was like, social media is amazing. And so I was like, I need to invest in this harder. And so within a year, I had 100,000 followers on Twitter. And then I got my speaker agent, and those two things happened very quickly. And then also within another year, I had 4 TEDx talks. So at that point, with the 100,000 and the agent and the 4 TEDx talks, I was like, you know what? This is good. I'm getting tons of opportunities, and that's where I really felt set.
No, and that's awesome. And let's talk about the TEDx for just a minute, because I get a lot of people that ask me every time I get somebody who does a TEDx talk, they're like, please will you ask them how the hell they got on TEDx? And I'm like, they applied. Sometimes it's that simple, but I know it's a little bit more than that. So walk us kind of through that journey of how you got to the TEDx stage.
Well, what I can tell you is, first off, the first 4 TEDx talks I never applied for. They reached out to me. And that's why I'm a big believer, and also I talk about this a lot in my work, is every single one of you out there needs to build a thought leadership personal brand for yourself. And what that means is whether you're a shoemaker, whether you're an astrologist, whether you're a holistic healer, whether you're a data analytics person, you can put together a strong thought leadership personal brand around who you are and what you're all about and sharing your expertise with the world. And when you do that, and it comes in different forms. When you become a thought leader, people reach out to you. So the first 4 TEDx talks, people reached out to me to speak. And that's why I got the 4 TEDx talks.
What was that? Because of networking or
networking is a big part of it. So networking is a big part of it. The other part is creating content, and the other one is always working on writing and speaking. And if you do those 3 things, if you look at all the thought leaders in the world, whether it's a Gary Vaynerchuk or Bernie Brown or Tony Robbins, they're all doing this. They're all getting better at writing and speaking. They're all creating new ideas of content. They are all networking, building relationships broadly and deeply. And so if you want to be, you want to get known as someone, you have to build that brand. So I had a strong brand, and people would come to me. The fifth TEDx talk, and that's all. But also, I learned a lot, and so I also did trainings on how to land your TEDx talks. But the fifth one, I did get that one I reached out for because the theme was so aligned. And I think the way to do it, number one, you need to make sure you have a good idea, because most ideas that I've heard from some clients are terrible. like a really bad idea is like, okay, so my TEDx talk idea is that the importance of sales. I'm like, well, that's not going to do it. Okay. Everyone knows sales is important, right? And you're a sales guy, and it's not going to get you a TED talk. The TED talk, well, you can put a unique slant. There's a TED talk on the art of ninjutsu and how it applies to sales. Now that's interesting, right? Because you're taking a unique slant that no one else is talking about. And that's actually a TEDx talk. I'm not sure you've seen it, but that's a good one. Ninjutsu sales, right? So that is really good. So people have really bad ideas. And the second thing is they don't know how to apply, in the sense of how do your ideas apply to the theme that they have. Because if your talk, so that, the talk that I pitched for the fifth one, the theme was connection. And I submitted a talk on, I want to talk about the history and mystery of hugs. And they're like, this is great. And then they said, here, come. So, and it aligned, right? So you have to find a way to align it to the thing. And the third thing you do is networking. If you network with different speakers and organizers of TEDx events, that's going to help you as well.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, on the history of hugs, did you finish by going out and hugging everybody in the crowd, or?
Actually, what I did was, first off, the talk evolved, and eventually it turned into, can you change a person's life in 20 seconds? And the idea was 20-second hugs, because the only time in life when human beings hug for more than 20 seconds, except for intimate partners and children, is death, funerals.
Right.
And so the idea was, what if we actually did proactive 20-second hugs just for that rejuvenation, that healing? And there was a lot of science and cultural benefits behind that. So I talked about that. And then on stage, I had people demonstrate the different types of hugs that people do, both awkward and good ones. And then in the end, we ended up with a group hug. So it was kind of fun.
Okay, we're going to put that video in the show notes. I just want to see the awkward hugs and everything. That's awesome.
It was funny.
That's awesome. Most of the speakers that I have on the show, their career, once they hit the stage and stuff, does these weird ebbs and flows that sometimes they're on top of the world, sometimes they're not climbing to the top. What's it been like for you? I mean, once you hit some of the bigger stage, some of the bigger audiences, has it always been sunshine and rainbows up there, or is it, that constant learning?
Definitely ups and downs, for sure. I'll be very frank. Last year was a down year, and it's been hard to get speaking gigs. So, but that's also the reason why I try to create new revenue systems with my coaching programs, my online programs, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think there was an ebb and flow there. And the other thing too, things change. Environments change, climates change, the economy changes. So you have to be willing to, and then people's needs change. Like sometimes the way I position what I have on my website is not as compelling anymore. So you have to change the way you say. I mean, networking is a perfect example. I mean, when I started networking, we weren't talking about networking on social media. We were just talking about networking at live events. And as social media became more common, I had to evolve my talks and my content around, okay, now how do you network online? How do you network via LinkedIn? How do you network via Twitter? And so I would actually share that as new insights. So I have to constantly redo my talks and add more and more stuff. I've rarely, yes, I have a couple of signature talks on personal branding and networking, but I'll sometimes have to add new things all the time. So you do have to keep learning. And that's another aspect, thought leadership, is that you're constantly evolving, growing, disrupting, and, changing the conversation around your expertise. And so, there are ebbs and flows, and I think that there always will be ebbs and flows. And, or the other thing that happens that I've struggled with a few times is overwhelm. There's been at least 3 different times in the last 6-7 years where I felt just so overwhelmed and overburdened with all the stuff that's on my plate that I just shut down for like a couple of months. And I remember I canceled a workshop and I kept delaying because I was just I felt overwhelmed. And that's happened 3 times, and I'm very mindful of that. In fact, they usually happen in September, in the fall. And so they happened 2 years in a row, and I was like, you know what, this year.
I won't tell you that September's coming up.
Yeah. No, so I know. So after it happened the second time, I was like, you know what, I need to make sure this doesn't happen again. And so I put systems in place to make sure it didn't happen, and then it didn't happen, which is great. So it didn't happen the last 2 years. So that was great.
So, similar to you, I completely walked away from corporate America. Made a lot of people a lot of money, that type of thing. And what I thought life was going to be after corporate America, none of that came to fruition. It's like you almost have that dream of, you get to set your own hours, you get to, do what you want. There's everything is twice the amount of work than you did when you worked for somebody else. And they say, you love it. And there's some aspects of things along those lines of having to learn how to do things a different way than you did in corporate America. What's that entrepreneur journey been like for you? And what would you tell somebody who's trying to get into the entrepreneur game?
That's a good question. First off, let me be frank that everyone's different in terms of how they are. So it's very important for you to know who you are and what you're all about and how you operate and function. So, I talk about personal branding quite a bit. Know thyself. If you know what you are like, you'll be able to create better structure and systems around how you're going to be as an entrepreneur. So for example, my wife was an entrepreneur for a couple of years, and she ended up not liking it. And her big thing was she's disorganized, and so that's what she says. And so she didn't really put the structure in place to keep herself organized, right? For me, I'm a very, very social, 100% extrovert type person, and so the first year I was lonely, like I missed my friends. And so one of the things I started implementing was I tried really hard to book a morning breakfast with somebody. Because what I would do is I would go meet them for breakfast at 8:30 and just chat and, catch up and whatever, various connections. And then after I came back, I'd actually be fired up. Okay, now let's get to work. And on days when I didn't do that, it was a sluggish start to my day. So that's something that I struggle with. So I realized I need to have the social interaction with people. So I always book breakfast and lunch with people because that social thing would fuel me throughout the day because I missed all my colleagues. I missed going to someone's cubicle or someone's office, hey, how's it going? And, talking about whatever. And I missed that. So for me, that was important. The second thing is, and to that point, it's important to have that routine and booking that time. Like really plan your calendar, your time on when you're going to do stuff. Other people may struggle with the fact that, a home office, like if you have clutter, then maybe you won't work as hard. Maybe other people need to change the scenery. So, maybe go to a Starbucks, maybe go to a library, maybe go to change it up, right? Other people struggle with that. So it's important to know what those things are that are going to help you be most productive, particularly during that time period. That's the most important start for being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, to me that's so interesting because my biggest struggle was I had an office to go to, and I'm an extreme morning person. So I'm up 5:20 every morning, and then I would be at the office by 7:15. And when I went out on my own, there was no office to go to. And so I lost all structure out the gate. My day was just thrown out of whack because I didn't understand, how to get my day going. So I found my local library was my answer.
Yeah.
What I thought was my answer, but they didn't open until 9 o'clock.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Open late.
Right. So now I'm trying to go work at the library just so I have some place to go. Yeah. But I've still got this 2 hours of downtime that I'm trying to figure out what do I do, and it threw my days out of whack. Now I work on my parents' farm because they have a little office set up, got great. Nice. I do on my podcast, but that allowed me to get back to that structure of starting off early in the morning and then, not having to work till, well, not every night, working till 10, 11 o'clock at night to get everything done. So I think that's really cool that you found a routine that allowed you to kind of get that sense of your business and back to some of that structure you need. How would you tell somebody to find their routine? Right? Because, they go from a corporate environment out on their own. What are the things they could do to figure out, what routines they need to put in place?
Well, again, it goes back to the whole personal brand thing. If you know your values and if you do some personality assessments and business assessments about what your personality type is like, you'll get a really fundamental understanding of what's going to be better for you and taking that time to do that. The other thing you can do is you can get some feedback from your network about, what you think would be good for, someone like me. So if I say, hey, my 4 best friends, what do you think would be good for me in terms of, in terms of what's good and what's bad? And so, my friends would say, Bobby, you probably get distracted a lot. So you may want to shut off your notifications on your phone. You may want to shut off. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, because and they know me, right? And you're like, that's it's good feedback. I can incorporate it into my system. So really taking the time to understand what that is really important. But I think the other big thing is really just planning. Like I'm a big believer now, like planning your day, and most importantly too, you have to plan for the stuff that happens, because often we plan the way we want our life to happen, but then we don't plan for when life just happens. And so what you should do is really plan 80% of your time and leave 20% for those emergency buffers or things that show up, because there's always going to be things that show up that are going to interrupt you or distract you or need to be done right away. And, if you book yourself too much, then you end up working until 11 o'clock at night when you didn't want to in the first place.
Right. Yeah, and I love the plan your day, because one of the things that I had to institute for my company was an actual to-do list, and I hadn't done that in years.
Yeah.
But, it's either the night before or the morning of, when, as an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur, you're running every which direction because you're handling everything. For me, it was, I had to literally start pulling out a note on my phone and say, what's everything I got to get done today?
Well, and also the to-do lists are great. But the thing is, as an entrepreneur, they have to be more fluid, because there's going to be ones that are must-do and you got to get done. And even then, sometimes they don't always get done. So then you have to manage that and send a message, sorry, I'm not going to get this, I'll do it tomorrow. Then there's the ones that, are nice to have. Then there's the ones at the bottom that, you'll get to over the next couple of years, right? So, you have to be fluid. And then the other thing is, too, then the next day, if it doesn't get done, you have to forgive yourself, right? Don't get rid of the guilt. I mean, one of the biggest aspects of entrepreneurship and being on your own is your mindset, right? So my mindset about pricing, my mindset about my routine, my mindset about what I want to do today, but also the stuff you get done, the stuff you don't get done. Like I have stuff in my journal, in my to-do list that I'm joking, but I'm serious. There are things that have been there for 2 years, but they're such low priority things,
right?
That I've never and maybe I'll get to them someday, but it's okay if I don't, because they're not important or urgent.
Well,
right?
And I love the word priority, because I saw a meme, I don't know, a month or two back that was kind of a game changer for me. And it's weird how, words can affect you. But it basically said, instead of saying I don't have time, say it's not a priority right now. And it was amazing that the simple shift of saying, instead of saying I don't have time, is that's not a priority, allowed me to prioritize my to-do list.
And here's what I'll also add to that. So
Go ahead.
Saying no to new opportunities is saying yes to current priorities. That's my big.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
Because people have trouble saying no.
You need to get that on a T-shirt somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I've been tweeting it for 10 years, and it tracks quite well. I have a lot of sayings, but that'd be funny. I never thought about making.
Well, see, I just created you a new revenue stream. Now you got a T-shirt line.
The T-shirt line. All my Bobbyisms. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
I'd have Donnieisms, but you got the nice version of me today. They wouldn't print a lot of my Donnieisms out there, So now you're speaking on a lot bigger stages. You're working with very large audiences and everything else. Somebody who's coming up and their dream is to be on the big stages and talking to large audiences. What's it like to walk out on stage and see the massive crowds and realize they actually want to hear you speak?
Oh, I love it. I mean, to me, it's very exciting. It's thrilling. It's electric. There's butterflies in your stomach. It's just the most thrilling feeling. There's that whole thing. Yeah, they're waiting for you to start. The music's playing and you get out there, and the biggest audience I ever had was actually just recently. There was 2,000 people. And it was just and actually it was funny is for me as an extrovert, I love the big stage. I mean, I speak to groups of 10 or 20. They're not as electrifying for me. The big ones, and I can tell you, like, that was a short talk. I only talked for 10 minutes, but it was literally, I believe it was probably the best talk I ever gave.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. I was so pumped up, and afterwards the applause was deafening. The laughs were crazy. So for me, like, it's very rewarding. Although what I will tell you also is rewarding is afterwards when people come up and talk to you about how it's impacted. Particularly the really deeply personal ones. Those are the ones that just really move me a
Yeah. So what's fun is yesterday I got an opportunity to go speak to a local university. It was their incoming freshman class. And
I've done that. That's fun.
Yeah. Well, and this is a very religious college, and they come from a culture of mom and dad says you will be a doctor, you will be a nurse,
Right.
and they're very much told what they're supposed to do. And literally the dean of the school came to me and said, look, I want you to unleash. I want you to tell these kids that they can pick and choose a life that they want. And I'm like, really? In this school? And then he's like, absolutely. And then, afterwards when these kids come up to you and they're like, nobody's ever told me that I can pick my own path. That stuff will hit you in the gut, man.
I love it. Yeah. That's great.
I love the fact that you say that you still get butterflies because people don't believe this.
Sure.
I haven't spoken on stages as large as you have, but I've spoken on a ton of stages, and I still get nervous walking up the stages. I get past it, as soon as you start, getting that rhythm and going. But how often do you get that oh crap moment? I'm fixing to go on stage.
I get butterflies every time I go on, and you should. Butterflies or whatever it is you're feeling for on stage, it means you care. The moment you have absolutely zero butterflies about anything going wrong or whatever it might be, like then your ego and your attitude is so out of whack that probably something's going to screw up. And also I wouldn't want to listen to that type of person. I want someone who genuinely cares, is genuinely authentic, who definitely has fears and hopes and things that's normal and human. And and the people who don't have the butterflies, they're the ones who speak in an inauthentic way, and ones who don't connect as well.
There's some big guys out there that are that secondary version that don't have the big fears, and it's all ego on stage, and you can definitely feel the vibe difference between the two personalities. And I'm with
absolutely. And so it's fear is normal, butterflies are normal, and for those who are worried about them, I was telling them, it just shows that you care. You care to deliver the best. You care to do a good job. You care about bringing value to the audience. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Where do you think all this is taking you, bud? I mean, you're only halfway through your story.
Halfway? Oh my God.
I look at everything. I mean, you're not that much older than me. I'm 41, so I can't imagine you're 80. So,
yeah.
So halfway through the story, halfway through the journey, where's this all taking to you? I mean, are you retiring tomorrow, or are you going bigger?
Good question. No, I mean, I think my plan would be to go bigger. I mean, I definitely want to go bigger. I'd love to speak more actually in the U.S., which is kind of funny. Like I've spoken all around the world. I've spoken, Europe, Asia.
You got the language for it. You haven't said A once. You haven't said that weird prompt thing.
No, but I just went to Africa to speak, which was amazing. So I've spoken all around the world. The only continent I haven't been to is South America and Australia. And I actually haven't been to the United States to speak.
Oh, wow.
So I'd love to get down there and talk more, but because I think that's a great way to make it bigger than what I'm currently doing. So definitely, I think around the brand in terms of my content, I'm on a mission to help people feel lost, stuck, or unfulfilled in their careers and their lives. So whether it's me or it's my content or whatever I'm doing with my programs and everything, that whether I can affect 1,000, 10,000, 1 million hearts, that's great. But I definitely see myself continue to be a speaker on the big stage. That's the main thing that I love. It's what fuels me. I'll still do the other stuff for sure, but that's the main thing. So the idea for me is, continue to get bigger, build the brand so that it's internationally recognized, and continue to inspire and help as many people as I can, because I definitely want to help them, and I definitely know what they're feeling, because I think we all feel this way. No one goes into the corporate world thinking, okay, all right, so my plan is for 50 years to stay in this company or this industry for 50 years and help them build. No one thinks that. We don't think beyond 20 years or 10, 20 years. When you look back at the top 5 regrets of the dying, right? And we think about legacy and impact, what our story is. No one thinks I wish I'd spent 50 more years in my company. They wish that they'd spend more time with the people that matter, like the people in their lives. They wish they spend more time exploring the grand diversity of this earth and doing really cool things. And that's what they really wish they had. And so, I personally believe that anyone who's in corporate, first off, you don't have to go. You can start right away after. You don't even have to go to college. Yes,
especially in this day and age.
I know people who didn't go to college and are just doing brilliant stuff. Although as a parent, I still want my kids to go to college, but whatever.
Your own oxymoron. I love it.
No, I know, right? No, but I more want them to go not for the degree, but just for the experience of living on their own, living in residence, meeting lots of people, trying to figure out how to do their own laundry and do their homework on their own. And that type of thing is really great learning. But you don't need that. I think everyone within 2, 5, 10 years within corporate should think about what's my exit strategy, right? Because within that time period, you'll have enough resources, assets, mentorship, personal and professional development, and skill building to do your own thing. And a lot of people don't believe that, but even doctors and lawyers start their own, their own practices, right? Everyone can do this. It's just that they get stuck, or they get stuck, or they're fearful of getting out. But I've met people 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 years old who want to do that change. And I think because they start thinking about their legacy. So I would say don't fear. Think about your plan and make the bold leap and ask for help, because there's tons of help around you to do that. So I know I'm segueing from what my plan is, but I'm very passionate about trying.
No, it's awesome. Because I have a theory that eventually big business is going to go away. Because as I continue,
really.
I keep looking at the trend of, what's happened through society, and I love the new gig economy. I mean, with you don't even have to have any experience other than being self-taught, and you can jump up and get an audio job, a videographer job, content writer, copyright, whatever, and people will pay you from all over the world to do things that they're not good at. So you can work and live. Houses are going in the opposite direction they did when you and I were growing up. And houses, when we were growing up, the goal was to get the big mansion, the big property. And now everybody's got these damn tiny houses, and, the smaller, the better. These kids don't want the antiques of mom and dad. They don't want all the tchotchkes and stuff that, my parents, have stuff. They're like, do you want this? I'm like, no, I don't want it, So there's a big shift happening, and maybe not the big companies are going away, but the model of the big companies and sitting in the sky rises and that is going to be shifting.
Well, I think the big company shift will be, way more. It'll be like you'll have a big giant company, but you won't have very many people. It'll be all technology, automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, that type of stuff. And the gig economy will be the thing run by the gig and knowledge economy will be run by all us people. Whereas the big gigantic companies will have just less people. So I don't see the big corporations leaving anytime soon. But I think it will shift a lot, because we're always going to need farmers. We're always going to need teachers. We're always going to need certain people that are doing things. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. So I think that so even with the corporate thing, I'm not. It's hard for me to envision a future without that corporate entity, but I do understand what you're saying in terms of the shift, because the culture of young people is shifting to what they want to do. But in the individual freedom, gig economy, knowledge economy, those are huge trends that I think younger generations are taking ownership of.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Well, Bobby, I got to say, it's been a lot of fun having you on the show with me today. I appreciate you and, kind of letting your hair down. You're like me and don't have
very
a whole
short.
Yeah. Here's how I like to wrap up every show I do. And I do stump some people with this, so be forewarned. If you were to leave my audience with a phrase, a motto, a mantra, a quote, a saying, something they could take with them on their journey, especially during the times when they're stacked up against it and they're trying to figure out how to push through their own mental game, what would be that phrase or motto or quote you would say, pull this out and remember this?
Wow. Well, I mean, there's two things that come to mind. One is a quote that's actually has been on my email list, in my email signature for many, many years. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. And that was by Milton Berle, and it's been in my signature for decades. And yeah, everything that I'm building is because I'm building the door if they don't knock on me. And the second thing I'll say is that this is just something I just personally believe, it's okay to ask for help. It's actually courageous to ask for help, because every single one of us feels lost or unfulfilled sometimes. So ask for help and get the help you need, and find a path to greater opportunity, because you are deserving and everyone else is in the exact same boat.
That's awesome, brother. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us, man. Keep kicking butt out there and have a lot of fun, bud.
Thanks so much, Donnie. Appreciate it.
You know what, guys? Really, thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people. And from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, Get My Social Content Done right now.